There's a small contradiction happening right now around the Toronto Blue Jays roster. The team is treated by many people as one of the most complete rosters in baseball. Deep, versatile, ready to compete from the very first day of the season. But when you look closely, slowly, position by position, a detail starts to show up that becomes a little uncomfortable. It's not the rotation. It's not the bullpen. It's the outfield. Because today, right now, Toronto's outfield looks strange, unbalanced in a way that usually doesn't happen with rosters built to compete for a division, especially when you look at the hitting side. And that's when a name appears that is still sitting on the market, almost as if nobody noticed. 12 years in the major leagues. 12, and still available. If you follow the day-to-day around the league, that immediately stands out. Because Pham may not be the type of player who signs a massive contract anymore or dominates headlines during the winter meetings. But there is one thing he has always done. Hit. That's it. Hit well. And sometimes that's exactly what a contender needs in March. Now step back for a moment and look at the current roster context. The starting point of this conversation is an absence. Out of action right now. Injuries happen. They're part of the season. But when a player with that type of profile temporarily leave the board, something starts to show up in the lineup construction, especially when you analyze who is occupying the outfield spots. Look at the names. 3 left-handed hitters. In the middle of that, Santander is a switch hitter, but he's not available right now. And the recent reinforcement brought in to cover that absence follows the exact same pattern. Left-handed. Now pause for a second, because this is the kind of detail that looks small when you only see a list of players. But in modern baseball, it matters a lot. Lineups need balance, especially against left-handed pitchers. And here comes a point that few fans look at when the season hasn't even started yet. Matchups. If you stack multiple left-handed hitters in the same stretch of a lineup, it becomes easy for an opposing manager to manipulate the bullpen. A lefty specialist comes in, 2 quick outs, maybe 3, dead inning. That kind of sequence decides tight games in August, in September, and especially when you're facing division rivals. And Canadian fans know how much that matters when the schedule tightens against teams in the... But there's another curious detail in this story. When the team needed to react to Santander's absence, the solution was bringing in Sanchez. And that's not necessarily wrong. But there's a history that creates discussion. According to recent league coverage, Sanchez's career performance against pitchers from different sides hasn't been particularly consistent, which means he doesn't exactly solve the lineup balance problem. He simply adds more power from the same side of the plate. And then comes a question that has started circulating among analysts. A simple question, but an uncomfortable one. Why hasn't Toronto looked for a right-handed bat to complete this puzzle? That's where the name that fueled this conversation comes in. And it wasn't a Reddit fan who brought this up first. It came from analysis within MLB coverage itself. The argument is straightforward. Pham could function exactly as the missing piece. Not as a star, not as an everyday starter, but as a type of veteran who rotates into the lineup, especially against left-handed pitchers. A very specific role, and an extremely useful one. Now it's worth pausing and looking at the other side of the equation, because when a player with 12 years in the league is still unsigned close to opening day, there's usually a reason. Age, defense, or off-field history. In Pham's case, the discussion has sometimes involved his attitude. He's competitive, intense, sometimes a little too direct. Some franchises simply prefer to avoid that kind of personality in the clubhouse. But there's an interesting detail. On the field, he still produces. Quietly, without much noise. But he produces. And in baseball, that usually has value. Now think about Toronto's roster construction. Is still there. 36 years old. A veteran. Still capable of big moments. But the team already manages his usage carefully. Because the season is long. Very long. And nobody wants to reach September with an exhausted body. So look how the pieces start to fit together. You have Varsho. You have Barger. You have Lukes. You added Sanchez. You still have an elite defensive center fielder. Outstanding glove. Huge range in the field. But offensively, he's not exactly the answer for a tough matchup. Now imagine a simple scenario. Tight game. 7th inning. Left-handed pitcher on the mound for the opponent. Who do you want at the plate? An experienced right-handed hitter. Or another lefty trying to break the sequence. That decision happens dozens of times over the course of the season. And that's exactly where players like Pham gain value. But here's the point that changes the perspective a bit. Many people look at March signings and expect massive impact. That's not what we're talking about here. This would be a depth move. Smart depth. The kind of move that doesn't become a national headline in Canada, but makes perfect sense inside a front office. Now stop for a second, because there's a question almost nobody is asking. What if Toronto is simply comfortable with the current imbalance? Yes, that's also possible. Maybe the team believes Varsho and Barger can improve their production against left-handed pitching. Maybe the staff sees development that hasn't fully appeared in the numbers yet. Or maybe the bet is that Santander will return quickly enough to balance everything out. But the problem with that strategy is simple. Baseball doesn't like passive bets, especially when a cheap solution exists on the market. And right now represents exactly that. Low risk, short contract, clear role. Another detail that stands out when talking to fans in Canada: experience. Pham has played for several franchises. He has competed in high-pressure environments. He has experienced postseason intensity. That kind of background matters when a roster enters tight division races. And anyone who follows it knows how every win turns into a battle. Now, look at the bigger picture. The roster is strong, very strong. Competitive pitching, power in the lineup, solid defense in several positions. But sometimes the difference between a good team and one truly ready for October comes down to small roster adjustments. That extra hitter, that bench piece who solves a specific matchup, that veteran who steps in during the 7th inning and changes the rhythm of a game. So, let's summarize the raw math of the situation. Toronto has outfield depth, but most of the bats come from the left side. Santander is currently out. Sanchez doesn't fix the hand-deadness balance. Springer already requires workload management, and there's a veteran right-handed hitter available on the market. Simple as that. Does that mean the signing will happen? No, but it does mean the conversation probably exists inside the front office. Because when a team is trying to compete at a high level, every matchup detail matters. Every well-built bench matters. Every option in the dugout matters. Especially in September. Especially in October. And maybe, just maybe, this is a final small decision that still needs to make before opening day. Or maybe the team simply moves forward with the current roster and trusts the construction it already built. But one thing is certain. As long as it remains unsigned, this conversation will keep resurfacing among league analysts and inevitably among fans. So now the question goes to all of you here at Jay's Pham Report. Would you bring Pham in to balance the lineup against left-handed pitching? Or do you think the current roster already has enough depth to handle the season? Let's see the debate in the comments. Because if there's one thing fans never ignore, it's lineup details.